only place for everything Vikings. 6, 1, 2, Vikings.
Welcome back to another episode of 612 Vikings. I am back alongside with Drew. Drew, how we doing after that first preseason W that we got against the Raiders? McCarthy looked good. Dallas Turner looked good. How we feeling after that first preseason win after what, like 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah. Watching that game, this is looking like if it carries over into the regular season, we might have a very legendary draft class, maybe an all-time great franchise draft class. So assuming everything kind of carries over, we have the chance of having maybe 3 major contributors on this team for the future, maybe even 4 guys. So it's kind of crazy if we can get that many, but if we can get that money, that's what Super Bowl teams are made of. So it's definitely exciting to be a Vikings fan right now.
Yeah, for sure. And, after Rocky 2022 offseason, in the draft, that whole draft for the Vikings kind of started off rocky with Lewis Seen, Andrew Booth no longer on the team, obviously, but just a couple of other picks, just kind of started off rocky, and now we're kind of back on track. And like you said before, this draft could potentially be one of the best drafts for the Vikings in recent memory or of all time, too. We could have a couple of good hits of, J.J. McCarthy, Dallas Turner, Levi Drake Rodriguez, some UDFAs as well. So only time will tell. And we'll see how things kind of pan out in the next, 5 to 10 years, I guess. And I guess we'll probably know a little bit sooner, maybe 3 to 5 years. But regardless, we have some, I guess, breaking news for you guys. And, it's very unfortunate. I know you guys have probably already seen this by now, but we are going to share the J.J. McCarthy injury. Very unfortunate. Kevin O'Connell had an emergency presser before they left today for Cleveland that, everybody was like, oh, what is this going to be? Is this going to be about J.J. McCarthy? Is this going to be the signing of Stephon Gilmore? And usually when you have a surprise press conference like that, it's never really a good thing. So a lot of Vikings fans were like, oh, it's about JJ. And of course, they were right. And he's going to have some meniscus surgery, whether that will be a trim or repair. We don't know quite yet at this time. So, Drew, what are we thinking about J.J. McCarthy missing possibly a couple weeks to a couple months on this meniscus injury?
I think a lot of Viking fans are getting deja vu to Sam Bradford in 2017, where he balled out and then all of a sudden he miraculously just has a knee injury. Hopefully it's not the same trajectory that McCarthy's going to have in the future, but for me, it's kind of, if you want to say if there's a silver lining, he did continue to play on it. It seems to be the popular belief that he tore it when he was spinning out of that sack, and then he went and he dove for that first down early on. So if that is when he broke it, or I'm sorry, it's when he tore it, he threw 2 touchdowns. He didn't throw any picks. That was after the interception. Basically balled out with a 130 plus passer rating. So, I saw one tweet out there saying something like, we have the NFL's version of Kobe Bryant. So I thought, if that's the case, then we got a guy who's a very,
I'll take it.
Yeah, we have a very tough quarterback if that's the case. But, to me, like, if that is the case, signs could be pointing towards a partial tear, which is, I think, what a lot of Viking fans want. So if you don't know what your meniscus looks like, it's this, Dustin has it up here. So pretty much you see this, it's like a cushion. So it's like, when you sit on your couch, you have that little cushion to give you a little bit of support. And that's what it is. It's basically to support your body weight. It's cartilage. So I actually have, I'm in the area of study of kinesiology, so I can kind of explain it to you. So if you don't know what the ins and outs of this are. So pretty much right now we have the one on the right, which is a tear. So what we're hoping for is basically it's like this silicone kind of structure, essentially, is the best way I can kind of compare it to, essentially, is if you had like a silicone like sort of thing.
You were kind of saying like a mouth guard earlier, like off the
yeah,
stream.
so like Yeah, like I guess if you wanted to count it like that, like it's like a C-shaped structure. So what you would want is you would want it to be on towards like the outer layer where the tear is through there. Because if that's the case and it is a small one, you could trim that where it's not that big of a deal as much. You know, he'll still miss some time because they got to put some rods into him to open up the meniscus. So that's where the 4 to 6 weeks comes from. Then obviously you have to have the stitches heal and all that because it is an invasive surgery. You know, and what you don't want is where, you know, I said it, you know, Dustin was saying it's like a mouth guard. So where you have where your teeth would be on like a mouth guard, essentially, if that's torn in the middle of the meniscus and it's like kind of spread and it like, you know, you kind of open it up like that, that's when it's going to have to be a full repair. And that's when he'll be out for the entirety of our, of this upcoming season. So that is really something you really just can't repair. Sorry, you can't just really trim. You'd have to repair it. It is similar to what Adrian Peterson had in 2016. The question around that one is, you know, Adrian Peterson was at the end of his career where he was, I believe, 30, 31 years old. So that's where they were saying, you know, do they just remove it because he is at the end of his career where, you know, in 2-3 years, he most likely won't be playing, which he ended up playing until he was like almost 36, 37 years old. So, he made the right call on that in hindsight. But, you know, with JJ McCarthy only being 21 years old, it's not even going to be a question where they can just flat out remove that meniscus if it is that kind of tear, where it would have to be somewhere they'll have to suture that up. And, you know, it's like I said, I kind of compared it to a silicone structure. So it is something that is very tender and it has to be taken very, very delicately to repair. And that's why it takes so many months to recover from, because it is such a delicate structure where if you take one wrong move, you know, you come back, let's say, you know, you have a repair, you come back 4 or 6 weeks, those sutures could just pop right open again. And then you're back to square one, which is something you don't want because you don't want to keep having, you know, surgery after surgery after surgery. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It's the good thing. I know a lot of people have been comparing it on, you know, I've seen on Twitter, a lot of people have been comparing the NFL script, if you want to call it, to Joe Burrow's knee injury during the COVID year, where, you know, luckily for McCarthy, it's not as serious as Burrow's, because Burrow was pretty much just a complete, like everything was torn in his knee. It was meniscus, ACL, MCL, like just everything's pretty much similar to the RG3 injury from about a decade ago. So, you know, we're not going to know until the doctors open it up, see what's inside. So, you know, I know similar things as, you know, after, unfortunately, when an athlete passes where they have CTE, that's one of those things you really can't fully diagnose until after you kind of get in there. So we'll see how this is. And I'm sure he'll probably be getting the surgery either probably tomorrow or the day after, because, you know, there's a pretty quick turnaround with that. So, you know, pretty much just hope and see how things go. You know, unfortunately, it's just been, you know, when we have good things, it just gets taken away. And then it's been a very roller coaster season. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like we just can't ever have nice things in Minnesota. So, you know, hopefully it is, you know, a partial tear, you know, and it is something they could just trim out and just kind of, maybe he can come back in 4 to 6 weeks. And, you know, the big thing is, you know, and I think we'll kind of talk about this earlier, but I'll ask Dustin about this, is if it is a trim, Dustin, what would you want JJ McCarthy to really kind of do in the meantime? Because for me, at least, if it is a trim, I still think it's one of those things where you could just maybe sit him out the entirety of the season still, just because that way you can get him reps and that way you're not forcing an injury. It is still one of those things where he is the franchise quarterback of the next, hopefully 15 years. So you kind of want to take it easy with him. So, and the big thing is with these quarterbacks that are sitting a year, it's not just holding a clipboard and watching film. It's also getting those reps in as well. So, I'll ask about your thoughts about that as well, and what your kind of takes are on that.
Yeah. So obviously, as a rookie coming out, you know, with Kevin O'Connell and, you know, everything like that, it's valuable to get those reps and work on your mechanics, because that, I think, was the biggest thing for McCarthy, was his footwork and mechanics and everything like that. And it kind of looks like he has improved on that since the OTA days earlier this spring. So I think he's definitely improved on that. But, you know, it's something that he should still be working on, obviously, as a 21-year-old rookie that, you know, really doesn't know everything about the NFL quite yet. So as of right now, watching film is the most that you can do right now. Understand the playbook, still be a part of the team, like as if you're still ready to play. I would still watch the film and everything, still be involved with the team. And that, I think, kind of go about it the way Kirk did last year, where he's still in the meeting rooms and watching film and everything like that. Although he can't participate, he still can do a lot of that other thing or other stuff as well. So, until he's ready, maybe, honestly, to me, I think that this is probably a smaller tear. I don't know, the way it kind of sounds, we don't know anything quite yet, so I'm just kind of putting it out there. But I I think it's probably a smaller tear if I had to guess. So I think he should be ready, by maybe the latest mid-season, maybe.
Mhm.
And he can still be around the team. He can still walk, do dropbacks and stuff. Maybe he's not cleared for contact quite yet, but um, you know, he wasn't really ready to start anyway. It was all gonna be Sam Darnold week 1. So I don't know why too many Vikings fans are. I get why they're upset. It's kind of setting his development back a little bit as well because he can't practice. So I get that, but I think we should take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath, and it'll be just fine. JJ McCarthy will be just fine. It's a minor setback for a major comeback, and that's what I tweeted earlier today. And I think that's how it'll go.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really gonna matter is how much is really torn off, essentially, because I know there's only a certain percentage where only a certain percentage can be torn for it to just be a simple trim. I think people are kind of, I guess, overhating on that idea. I think people think like, oh, if a trim it just can be no matter what, like it's an option of this or that. Like he gets the option of both, where it very well could be. If it's in that gray area, then definitely just get the repair and don't just don't worry about it. We'll come back next year stronger. If it is in that gray area, play it safe. I get that, but if it is that like small partial tear that we've been kind of talking about, it's going to be a trim. You don't get the option to just repair it, because the doctors are going to get you. Their jobs are to heal you, not to make you sick longer and have to go through much more physical therapy longer than you necessarily need to. So if it is, like I said, if it is a partial tear, they're just going to trim it out. He'll be back in 4 to 6 weeks. And I know some meniscus tears that kind of come to mind, some partial ones. We just recently had one. I know some Viking fans are familiar with it. Is Karl Anthony Towns. He had a meniscus tear right before the playoffs. A lot of people thought he was going to be out for the season. He got a trim. He played fine. I know some Timberwolves fans will disagree. They'll look at some bad moments. He's kind of like, I feel like he's kind of like that Kirk Cousins for the Timberwolves. Essentially, you either love him or you hate him. But he was still productive. After the trim, and he stepped up in some big ways. And then I look at some complete meniscus tears where look at the Chicago Bulls and Derrick Rose. He had an ACL tear, and then a little bit later on, he had the meniscus tear. Which after that meniscus tear, he just had so many knee injuries and knee issues where his career was just shot after that point, which he's not at that point. Let's just make that clear. He hasn't had any other knee injuries. He didn't have any at Michigan, never really had him at high school. So this is his first major knee injury that he's ever had. So, it's something like I wouldn't really worry about, but if it is a complete tear, he'll come back and he'll be stronger next year. Just the only downside is he just won't get those reps and, with the ones, build that chemistry. But, and that, he can do that over the offseason too. So, it is a long year. He has a whole year. So he'll have 3 months. He'll have training camp next year to get that repertoire with those, the new receivers, whoever, we might have some new guys on offense next year. So who knows with that, but, it's kind of bringing it back, but it's not really, it's going to be the doctor's recommendation on, if it's going to be a trim. If it's partial, it's probably going to be a trim. If it's a complete tear, like I said, if it's that inner part where that meniscus, it's kind of split into 2 parts down the seam there, it'll be a full repair. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm sure what it is going to get leaked. They'll say his timetable for his injury, but for me, the fact that I'm getting, if there's any sort of hope, if you're an optimistic fan, the hope is that he still continue to play on it, and he balled out, and it wasn't really a thing where it was really prevalent when he was playing. He, the symptoms
And
kind of flared
that's
up
what
more
makes me
afterwards.
think that it's not as serious.
Yeah. So
because he kept playing on it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just kind of one of those, it's one of those things where, we'll see what, we don't really know until we kind of get inside the meniscus, or, until the doctors get inside. So, we'll just have to wait and see on, what the news that is released on what kind of meniscus tear we got for JJ McCarthy. So.
Yeah. So essentially, I guess there's 3 different options. Really, realistically, there's 2, but the first one is rehab alone, no surgery, is 4 to 6 weeks. It looks like that's pretty much out of the question. And then you got a meniscectomy.
Yes, that's
if I'm saying that right.
Yeah,
that's the or removal.
Yeah,
increases risk for knee problems in the future, but only 3 to 6 weeks. So that's probably what he'll do.
That's it. So the meniscectomy will be where if it's more of like just a little thread of it is just kind of separated from it, they'll just go in, they'll just trim that off, and then he'll come back out. So it's not when it's a trim, they're not fully taking out the entire meniscus. They're going to leave whatever healthy meniscus is still in there.
Yep.
And God forbid if it is something where this entire meniscus is just shot, which again, we don't know, but it is something that we still have to think about, as an option. If the meniscus is totally shot, they're just going to take the whole thing out. So I don't think it is that serious. Worst, I know they said worst case, it is a meniscus repair. He'll be out all season. That's more of the timetable aspect of it. If they just take out the whole meniscus, that is the worst case, where now it becomes a chronic injury where that cushion for that knee is no longer there. So it's not going to be a thing where he'll just up and retire. That's not where we're worried about. He'll still play. It's just one of those things where he'll just have to be very, very careful, and he'll have a lot of knee pain for the rest of his life. And it is something where he'll develop arthritis later on. So it would be one of those things where he'll probably get some cortisone shots or whatever in his knee if they do have to, if that is the case, which I don't think it is, because if it was that big of a deal, he would have been laying down crying in pain. So that's why we're kind of talking about it's probably for us. I'm just saying the odds of it being a partial tear is more likely, but I still wouldn't rule out that it could be a complete tear. But like I said, it's one of those things we're just going to have to see. So
yeah, let me add this too, is the difference between a guy like Adrian Peterson at 30 years old, getting that meniscus injury, and JJ at 21 is obviously their age difference. So we got to add Drew in there. So the whole age difference, that's the thing. JJ is going to heal essentially a little quicker than Adrian Peterson would at 30, 31 years old. So that's also a plus for JJ McCarthy, that his age is on his side, and he's going to have that meniscus trimmed. Whatever he does with it, obviously we don't know, but whatever he has, he's going to heal a little quicker because he's 21. He's still young, and like I said, it's a minor injury in the grand scheme of things, that he can come back a little quicker. So yeah, I don't know, just the age is on his side. So that's all I want to add to that.
Yeah, pretty much, like you said, age is on his side, so it'll be more of that early timetable, barring any sort of setback, which obviously can still happen, but God forbid that happens. But age will be on his side. So if everything is what we're expecting it to be, if it is what we're expecting it to be, and it is a partial tear, and he'll just and it is something where they'll just trim it out, I think he'll probably be back. He'll probably start after that bye week, because they just to be on the safe side, give him some time, get him some reps, because again, he'll most likely be sitting out for some time. So I still wouldn't rule out that McCarthy is still going to be playing this year. It's just going to be one of those things where I do think maybe Rookie of the Year is probably out of the window now. He basically would have to have some historic stretch, like Jordan Love first year run kind of stretch. So, but yeah, I mean,
he'll be just in time to lift up one of these.
Yeah, exactly. So
what do you say? What do you say?
I, I mean, here's the thing too. Like, I know there. We've been saying too that age is on his side, and if it is a full repair, let's just say Sam Darnold is, he gets us to the playoffs and he's really ahead of schedule. He's on the early end of that table, and it is a 4-month injury. He'll be out until what that be December, January kind of timetable. Let's just say, the Vikings are 9-8, they're that 7th seed. Sam Darnold's not lighting up, but the defense is really carrying you. Do you consider making that switch into the postseason if he's ready to go by the wild card round if they were to win a wild card spot in this upcoming season?
The only thing that would scare me about that situation is I think you'd almost have to stick with, I guess, the hot hand in Sam Darnold, because none of those quarterbacks have any playoff experience except, I guess, technically Sam Darnold does because he was with the 49ers. But to actually play in a game, I don't know. I guess I'd probably go with Sam Darnold, but I would like to see a little bit of JJ McCarthy sometime this year. And I think I speak for all Vikings fans when I say that, or at least most of them, because a lot of them want him to not even play at all and just develop and all that. And I think as a fan, a lot of us are just super anxious to see JJ McCarthy play. And just that little taste of preseason really turned a lot of heads too, because after that first interception, he balled out. Like, I forgot that he threw that interception because he came back, had a couple good chunk plays of 15 yards or more on some of them, and then 2 touchdowns, obviously. So I know everybody says it's just preseason, but at the same time, the kid can play. He's working with the twos going against a little bit of the first team Raiders defense too. Mm-hmm. So, that says a little something as well. So we'll see how McCarthy bounces back from this injury and just kind of see where it goes. I think I'm pretty optimistic about it. So I'm hoping it's just a small little tear and he'll be back and ready to go, maybe by the bye week, maybe mid-season.
Yeah. I think for me, I think if it's one of those scenarios kind of similar to the 2018 Bears, where I'm not saying the Vikings will have the number 1 defense, but let's just say it's that scenario where the defense is the reason why you're winning, and they're winning with the run game, basically old school ball. And Sam Darnold is kind of doing what he did in the past, where he's throwing a lot of picks and maybe not throwing the touchdowns that you're kind of needing. Say it's 12 touchdowns to 9 interceptions kind of a season. I think you kind of have to consider it because, the Wilfs are definitely one of those owners where they look at it as you're in the dance, so you have a shot. So I would consider it, but I think if he does come back after a repair this year, which still is a small sliver of a chance, I think it's kind of similar to what Aaron Rodgers had with the Jets. I think had he suffered that Achilles tear maybe week 1 of the preseason where JJ McCarthy is, I do think that, and the Jets playoff hopes are still alive. I think Aaron Rodgers, you might have seen him in that last 2 games coming off that Achilles tear, because it is something we did see. It is not unheard of. Cam Akers, a former Viking, he tore his Achilles with the Rams, I believe, in late July. And we're kind of in that early August period. So basically a week later, essentially, for where McCarthy's at, Cam Akers came back in the wild card round, and, he was a big part of that Rams Super Bowl run. And, he had some big plays to, kind of carry them over Tampa Bay. So I know people are kind of throwing out that a season's going to be over, but I wouldn't really necessarily throw that out yet, to kind of see where he's at, because the repair is such a weird injury because, like I said, it's kind of like that silicone kind of structure. So you don't really know how it's going to heal up. It can heal up really good. If it heals up really good, you might see him at some point this year. You might see him maybe in a week 18 game, kind of similar to what we saw with Patrick Mahomes in 2017 when the Chiefs were kind of locked into that playoff seed, I believe, and Mahomes got a rep against, I think it was the Steelers or something like that. So, he got some reps in on that last game. So it is something I still wouldn't rule out. So, we'll just it's one of those things we're just going to have to take it week by week and just see kind of where he's at. If it is a repair, and obviously if it's trim, he's going to be playing or be able to play. He'll be able to be healthy enough to suit up. So, it's one of those things where it sucks because either it's going to be the best news you've ever heard or it's going to be the worst news you've ever heard this year. So it's kind of like in that weird, tweener spot because you really don't know. It's either
it can't get any worse,
yeah.
can it?
Yeah, I don't know. We say that, but let's just
something always happens.
Yeah, I do think though with this McCarthy injury though, I think you got to sit Sam Darnold for the rest of this preseason though, because I do not want to see another season of Nick Mullins. I don't want to see Sam Darnold go down. I'd rather see Sam Darnold than Nick Mullins because my heart cannot take the having you look like Brett Favre and then sink down to throwing 4 interceptions
and then throw a pass to the defensive lineman.
Yeah, it's just something like that. Yeah, so I my heart can't take a Nick Mullins season, especially the whole season. So I don't think that it is something where Nick Mullins, hopefully he doesn't start. But I guess another point I'd bring up too is, maybe Sam Darnold's not working out, and say they're like 4-4, you're around 500. You're not really winning because of him. We're just kind of average right now. Is there any quarterback you would maybe consider trading for maybe mid-season if McCarthy does have a season-ending injury where he's not looking like he's going to play? I mean, I don't know if there's anybody out there that you kind of have in mind that you kind of like that could maybe take over the reins a little bit if there is a trade possibility out there.
Nobody really comes to mind, and I'm trying to think of free agency too, but the best person in free agency would be Ryan Tannehill, and I don't think he really fits the Kevin O'Connell offense too much. I don't know. Like that's I don't because in Kevin O'Connell's presser too, he noted that the Vikings will probably look at some quarterbacks to either sign or trade for or whatever. So it's a possibility that they could go and do that, but I think that they're going to wait till they see what the deal is with McCarthy, and if he's going to be back in a couple weeks, you don't need to sign a quarterback at all. So,
yeah.
I don't know, and like they're two different, like McCarthy and like Peterson, to go back to that point too, is with the different positions. McCarthy, he's an athletic guy. He'll run around and stuff, but he's not a workhorse running back, getting hit all the time, getting hit in his knees. He might once in a while, but he's not taking that brute force Peterson did or any other running back does because he's a quarterback. He walks and runs and jogs around, but he's not getting constantly hit in the knees, every single play. So that's another point I wanted to add as well. So other than signing quarterbacks, I think you got to wait and see what the deal is with McCarthy, because if he's going to be back in a couple weeks, you don't have to sign anybody. If it's going to be a couple months, I would probably take a look at, the final, maybe the last week of preseason cut down, all that. So we'll kind of see what they do with that.
Yeah. A guy I was kind of thinking would probably be the most realistic option. I think it is somebody, correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin, but I believe when we traded for Joshua Dobbs, I believe Jacoby Brissett was also on the table for him. And I don't know if Joshua Dobbs is going to be a guy that they bring back. I think he's going to be somebody that just stays in San Francisco. I think he's their Sam Darnold replacement. Would Jacoby Brissett interest you if it is something where maybe you bring some more quarterback depth in? And maybe that's something where they're maybe looking to take, move off of Jaron Hall or, stash him on our practice squad or something like that. Is that something that would interest you if it is something they were looking at in the past?
Probably not. I would say no.
Okay.
But I think they are somewhat comfortable with Nick Mullins in a way, because you don't keep a guy around for 2-3 years, I think all in all, they're essentially comfortable with Nick Mullins. And I say that to say this: if McCarthy never got hurt, everything was going his plan, he was looking really good, it's a real QB battle between Darnold and McCarthy. I think they were looking to trade Nick Mullins at some point. I think that was his steam at one point. I don't know if the Vikings eternally thought about that, but it's definitely some speculation that fans had too. But you could have had some trade value for Nick Mullins, and I think that he's probably going to stick around now. And I don't know if they'll keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster. maybe as an emergency quarterback, your third one. But I think that they just keep Darnold and Mullins right now.
Yeah. I you brought up the point too that they were looking to maybe trade Nick Mullins, and if it is a trim and it comes out it's a trim, I still wouldn't rule out that Nick Mullins does get traded. I think it's one of those things where, say it's a 4-week injury, they trim it and he'll be back by week 2 essentially. So, I would say Nick Mullins still does have trade value. It's definitely something that's still on the table at this very moment. On a Tuesday. So. We'll kind of wait and see what the rest of the news is, but I think that will, whatever happens with McCarthy will happen with Mullins' fate too. So, and I think a guy that you can maybe pick up as that third quarterback option would just be somebody that you could just find out in free agency or just some UDFA, just some guy you can kind of stash, on your practice squad or as your emergency quarterback essentially. So I still wouldn't rule that out too, but I think a lot of this upcoming season is definitely going to depend on what McCarthy has to, what they're going to do with that knee. So it's definitely kind of a wait and see mode. And it's unfortunately a lot of Vikings fans want the answers now. Instant gratification is kind of a society. We all want our answers right now. But fortunately, we're not at that point. So we'll most likely get it in hopefully a couple of days. So yeah, we'll just wait and see what the news is. So Vikings fans, don't jump off a bridge yet. Wait and see what they got. I still think there's a possibility.
Bad news could potentially turn into good news. So we'll see.
I still think that the idea of this being a partial tear is still a very strong possibility. And if it is a complete tear, we'll just come back next year. And, unfortunately, we'll just have to wait another year for JJ McCarthy. And, they always say the great things come to those who wait. So hopefully that's the case here for the Vikings. So we just got to maybe, if it is a complete tear, we'll just have to wait another year. So,
yeah, and that might have been the plan anyway. So, we'll have to see. So make sure you guys stick around for any updates about JJ McCarthy. We'll probably, depending on what kind of news we get tomorrow or Wednesday, we'll pump out an episode that night. Make sure you guys stick around. Follow us on 612 Vikings on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and then on Twitter as well at 612 Vikings. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Skol Vikes.